Welcome back. In this video, I'd like to share with you a short story. The story of Alfred Hitchcock, one of the most famous film producer, film director, who pioneered significant developments in the movie industry, particularly for the horror genre. Here is a short story. Sir Alfred Hitchcock was an English-American film director who pioneered significant developments in the movie industry of the mid-20th century. He is most famous for producing several classic films, especially of the thriller genre. Hitchcock is considered one of the greatest and most influential film producers of the 20th century. Some of his most famous films include 39 Steps in 1935, Rear Window in 1954, Vertigo 1958, and Psycho in 1960. In the documentary, the basic material has been created by God, whereas in the fiction film, the director is God. He must create life. Alfred Hitchcock is quoted in Hitchcock in 1984. Alfred Hitchcock was born 13 August in 1899 in Leytonstone, Essex, in England, where he studied at the Roman Catholic Salesian College and later St. Ignatius College. His childhood was not particularly happy. He suffered from obesity, a result of a glandular condition, and his parents were strict and somewhat remote. When he was just 5, his father sent him to a police station with a note that he should be locked up for 5 minutes. And this left him with a lifelong fear of authority, particularly the police. During his childhood, the young Alfred would often spend time by himself inventing games and drawing maps. When he was 15, he left college to study at the London Council School of Engineering and Navigation. This qualified him to be a draftsman. He gained his first job with the telegraph company, but it was around this time he developed a burgeoning interest in the cinema, which was recent innovation. In the evening after work, he would watch films and study the cinema trade newspapers. Toward the end of the First World War, he attempted to join the army, but was rejected because of his weight, although he did later manage to sign up for a brief time as a cadet in the Royal Engineers. First steps in films. After the war, he began writing short stories which were published in his company's in-house magazine. Hitchcock also developed an interest in photography and the new art of film production. He gained employment in 1920 as a title card designer for a company which would later be known as the Paramount Pictures. With hard work, Hitchcock progressed through the company and within 5 years was producing silent films. In later years, he said that silent films were the purest form of cinema. In the mid of the 1920s, he traveled to Germany, where he picked up many of the emerging expressionist techniques used in modern filmmaking. After a few challenging early films, he gained his first commercial and critical success with The Lodger, a story of the London fog, in 1927. By 1929, he had produced 10 films. His 10th film, Blackmail, was a significant moment for him because it was one of the first Talkers films with an audio track. Success in the 1930s. By the mid of the 1930s, Hitchcock was establishing his reputation as one of the leading film producers in Britain. Several films proved great success, such as 39 Steps in 1935, Sabotage 1936, and The Lady Vanishes in 1938. Hitchcock proved a master at creating tension and a fast-moving plot line. It didn't tie down the audience in detail, but created scenes of dramatic tension. Hitchcock pioneered the use of famous backdrops, either famous landmarks in a city or the wilderness of the Scottish moors, 39 Steps in 1935. Later in his career, he used many famous landmarks, such as Mount Rushmore in North by Northwest in 1959 and the Statue of Liberty in Saboteur in 1942. Hitchcock's critical success in England led him to be approached by David Selznick from Hollywood. In 1939, the Hitchcock family moved to California, where he began working on a new film. His first film, Rebecca, in 1940, received an Academy Award for Best Picture. Hitchcock was not particularly enamored of America, but he did enjoy the greater resources available in American studios. It was an improvement over the small budget of the English film producers. Toward the end of the Second World War, in 1943, he returned to England, where he produced 2 films in French for the Free French Forces. In 1945, he also served as film editor for a documentary about the concentration camps that were liberated by the British troops in Bergen-Belsen. However, the images were so shocking, it was later shelved until being published in 1985. Memory of the Camps, the films, was also re-released in 2014. After the war, Hitchcock returned to America, where he resumed his long and successful American film career. In particular, he enjoyed developing his talents in creating psychological, intriguing films. Fear isn't so difficult to understand. After all, weren't we all frightened as children? Nothing has changed since Little Red Riding Hood faced the big bad wolf. What frightens us today is exactly the same of thing that frightened us yesterday. It's just a different wolf. This fright complex is rooted in every individual. Alfred Hitchcock states. The Golden Era. The 1950s was Hitchcock's golden era, producing classic films such as Dial for Murder in 1954, Rear Window 1954, Vertigo 1958, North by Northwest in 1959, and Psycho in 1960. Psycho was Hitchcock's best known and most profitable film. It broke box office records as viewers flocked to view his pioneer new horror genre film. Hitchcock, like Walt Disney, was also early to embrace the new medium of TV. He hosted TV series Alfred Hitchcock Presents, from 1955 to 1965. His prominent role in hosting the show helped him become one of the most recognizable film directors and media celebrities of the day. During the next 2 decades, his output was less prolific, as old age and failing health limited his work. But he continued to produce feature films up until his death. Hitchcock died of a renal failure on 29 April 1908, while at his home in Bel Air, Los Angeles. He had just recently received a knighthood from the Queen. Hitchcock films often share similar elements, responding to criticism for repeated ideas. He once retorted, self-plagiarism is style. Hitchcock often portrayed the guilty part as quite a charming man. Often an innocent man was accused of being guilty in the first instance by authority, before being able to prove his innocence. His leading ladies were often high school blondes, such as Ingrid Bergman, Grace Kelly, and Tippi Hedren. These women were often reserved and cold in his films, giving little emotion away. Hitchcock stated, blondes make the best victims. They are like virgin snow that shows up the bloody footprints. Alfred Hitchcock interview on CBS TV, 20 February 1977. Hitchcock also enjoyed the gallows humor, which is not always obvious to spot. Finally, Hitchcock developed a tradition of making short cameos in his films. Hitchcock had a reputation for being unsympathetic to actors and a hard taskmaster. He was rumored to have said the actors were like cattle, and this remark hung around Hitchcock, though he later said he had been misquoted. However, many actors gave memorable performances in his films and won Academy Awards for their performances. Hitchcock was nominated 5 times for an Academy Award for Best Director, but he never won. In 1956, he became a United States citizen, although he remained a British subject. And this is the story, a short story of Alfred Hitchcock. Thank you for watching. See you next time.